The board of county commissioners.
Not live yet.
Oh,
It's preparing.
okay.
That was just a run through.
That was a run through.
Yeah, you want to practice anyway.
Yeah, take two coming up. Now you're like.
That's when she's nice.
I can tell.
That's a little quiet. I call to order this special meeting of the Board of Raleigh County Commissioners. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, well, I would like to welcome everyone. As you all know, the only matter before the board today is a request of the city of Manhattan to make certain findings concerning the annexation of a 78.73 acre tract of land. And I will now open the public hearing. There are printed rules of conduct for the meeting available in the next room. Please read them. If you haven't had a chance to pick up a copy, they're out on the table out there. That will be during the open public session. The first three entities scheduled to testify will be given a reasonable time to present. We're calculating about 20 minutes, and that's a bit flexible, maximum of 30, but 20 minutes to start. And that's because their task is to convince this board to approve or not approve the annexation request. The Random Woods homeowners are scheduled number 4 on the agenda. Since several homeowners are expected to appear and speak on the same subject, opposition to the annexation request, they will be given 3 minutes for each one of the multiple speakers. And we will have a timekeeper on that. And at that point, you'll have to come to the podium, give your name and address, and speak for 3 minutes. Okay, our first testimony today is from the city of Manhattan. The city has advised this board they are submitting their written request for this hearing as their testimony and will not appear today. Is there anyone present who to testify on behalf of Manhattan?
Have you opened a public hearing as the chair?
Yeah.
She did.
Okay.
She did. Okay.
She's just moving past. Moving past.
Okay, where was I? Let's see. Is there anyone here from the city of Manhattan to speak? Okay, seeing none, then we will. Our second testimony today is from Midwest Concrete Materials. Is there anyone here present today that will speak of Midwest Concrete Materials?
Yes.
You'll go to the podium and state your name.
Is the Mark Basham with Olson, representative of or MCM. Is the PowerPoint pulled up that I could?
We've got Derek is going to run that.
Okay.
For you. You just let him know when you need the next slide. He can run it from the other room. Aren't we high tech?
You better be ready for this. Going to go pretty fast.
Here, did we tell you, but you don't need to use your full 30 minutes. Every court of appeals I've ever been in front of always tells me.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So a lot of this presentation is what was presented at the public meeting that we had at the church, and also is what was sent to the city of Manhattan. This is, of course, in the red with the white dots is the tract of ground that we're discussing today. And the other red kind of a dash line is a notification area that we sent to the neighborhood for the public meeting that we held out there at the church. So next slide. So this slide is a current zoning, and in the gray is the zone currently ag with a small little C2 zoning in the county that's in red. And it's my understanding through history, this used to be an old gas station or some other type of a business down there. So that's been years ago that has been located there. Next slide. This is the green and the gray is part of the airport overlay and the approach of the aircraft into the Manhattan Airport. And these are the critical areas that we need to be cautious of, and in developing this site, which you'll see at the request of the city, the trees being removed in this approach area to get underneath that flight path of the airport. So next slide. This is the airport departure surface, and you've got the existing departure surface that's in blue, and then the future departure surface. And that future departure surface is based on the runway being lengthened in the future. And as we all know, that will be way in the future if that is ever expanded. But it needs to be planned for in that, so there's no detriment to that airport. So this grading that was done was basically, if you look down below in the red or on top, and essentially based on the grading that's being developed, is to get at least 40 foot of clearance. So essentially have room for flexibility with a building that will have to be that will be built. And this rough grading area is based on that departure surface that's being used. At this time, there is no plan, there is no layout of any lots, and the expectation here is to be about 3 years or 4 or 5 years to get this ready, to get all the soil taken down to be below this departure surface. So it will take time to develop. Next slide. This is that same look of that grading plan for the departure surface clearance. One thing that we heard at the neighborhood meeting is having a buffer, and worked with the city of Manhattan. And Manhattan has a buffer plan that is developed with their development code. And this is a 50-foot buffer around the neighborhood. And what's in red is the 50 foot, and it will be, all the trees will be left intact. It won't be touched in that 50 foot. They kind of in that darker red and their oak leaf, oak leaf circle is an area that has no trees, which there'll be a plantings of trees in that area for that 50 foot per the development code of City of Manhattan for a buffer area. They have specific plannings and how that works, and that will be followed. I believe the City of Manhattan has in their information they sent to you, I think there may be an ordinance or a resolution or a petition, I don't know how it's named, that the owner will sign that says that this will be incorporated into the project per the City of Manhattan. And I think that is something that is going to follow with the land. So it's carried forward. Oak Leaf will never be connected into this development, and that is noted in there as well. So as I stated, there is no lot layout, no street layout. There's nothing being proposed until we really get into it a little more as to how the grading's working out in time frame. As we heard in the leaders retreat the last couple of days, is we are in very much need of additional land for development. This sets the stage for land to be put into development. The proposed zoning on this is industrial commercial zoning that will follow with the City of Manhattan zoning. The FAA will require, and this is going to have to go through every permitting process with the FAA for any type of a building that gets built. That means that what it looks like, what materials are used, can't be bright lights, can't be smoke, can't be anything that will deter the flight path of the airport. So this is going to be heavily permitted through the process as to what can and can't go there. And that's one thing we don't want to do. We've got a very good economic driver with Manhattan, and that's something that was going to be really work well with the city. So, yes.
Mark, yeah, the commissioners can ask questions during the
Okay,
presentation.
yeah, go ahead.
I do, if you go back to the previous slide that you had, it shows that blue area that crosses over, looks like one of the lots.
Yes.
There, what do you plan on doing? Are you planning on doing anything with that, or
No.
how is that going to go?
No, that's just, that's the FAA flight departure surface area. That's
That
just,
does not have to be lowered,
no.
that piece.
Well, we haven't taken any elevation, but it's probably trees in that area that would be an issue. And I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
That far onto that property, I don't know. A lot of the area for trees is down in more towards Skyway Drive.
Mhm.
And that's something that it'd have to be researched. I don't know about up in that area.
And that will come up during zoning. And that will come up later in the zoning process.
Probably not. It's just something that the airport has, the FAA has control of what happens in that area. So with the trees, I actually don't know the answer to that question. And it would be easy to find out. It's something I never thought about what happens on that lot. I don't know where so yeah.
Yeah,
I think we'd have to get with Brandon and determine how far that is in the airport overlay.
okay, I would like to have that, soon, if we can get some sort of a reading on that.
Sure.
The other question I had in here before you go on further is, you talk about Oak Leaf Drive, and in driving through the neighborhood, there are a lot of cul-de-sacs there that are similar to Oak Leaf. Will this apply to the other cul-de-sacs for the entire neighborhood that they?
Well, a cul-de-sac typically doesn't extend through. Cul-de-sac is an end of a road.
Mhm.
Oak Leaf is platted is to be an extension of a road. That's the way it was platted originally, and there's no intention of extending that road. If you go to the next slide, I think it might show, yeah, if you look at the others, all the others are cul-de-sacs, and there will not be an extension through a cul-de-sac. There is no intention of ever going through Random Woods with any construction, anything.
Okay, that was what I wanted to clear up.
Yeah.
That's all I had at this point.
Yeah.
On the right side, there's a dash line. Is that rerouting that? Is that part of this airport thing, or is that if they ever extend the runway?
On the right, on this slide,
the road on the right side,
Oh,
the existing road.
that's actually in the GIS. That was done, oh gosh, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. I think it was when K-18 was being built.
They added that when they did the K-18.
Yeah. So that was when the extension of the runway was really hot and heavy, that it was needed to happen.
Okay.
And so that's a future relocation of Wildcat Creek Road.
Not something going on right now.
Oh, no.
And this phase of the
No.
airport stuff.
No, that is actually city Manhattan property right there.
Oh, I know that's.
Yeah.
And you
No,
know
there's-
that extension isn't part of this plan, but
It is not part of this
It's got a
plan.
wish list item, I guess, for the airport.
Next slide. And next slide. Yeah, go on. I added this slide as part of the Ogden Future Land Use Plan. And is there a mouse?
Pointer?
Pointer.
Someone heisted mine. Shining his eyes to test it.
No, I was testing it up there where he's gonna go with.
Worker thump.
So this is the church that is actually annexed into the city of Ogden. And that church is where we held the public meeting. And as you can see, there's nothing in north of Skyway Drive in their future land use plan. Go to the next slide. This is Manhattan's future land use plan. And right in here is, probably should have blown that up, but right there is Random Woods. And then of course there's the airport. And you can see how this is in the future growth area opportunity for Manhattan. It's in their comp plan as an area for growth. So it follows and a lot of the discussions that we've had at the public meeting, and also I've had with the city of Ogden as well. Maybe last week or the week before that, is why Manhattan and why not Ogden, and the decision is basically it's fire, any kind of new development, anybody coming to town is going to require full-time fire protection, and also going to require sprinklers in their building. And so Manhattan has utilities that can be extended to this site that can provide full fire protection, and with water, it can be provided for sewer and wastewater. And then the fire protection is, of course, by the manned fire station there at the airport that the city already has. So there was some discussion with all those parties about that. And in a nutshell, it's fire protection and services that all developments like this need to be, in order to be a full service development into the future. So that all.
Yeah. What is the time frame on developing this particular area?
I think what we said in the public meeting have stated all along, 3 to 5 years. Let's go back maybe 3 or 4 slides. Right there. We'll go back right there. So you kind of treated this as it's based on the topography and the way it's kind of set up. You kind of have a kind of a pod there and a pod there. So you're probably looking at this being in phases. So as maybe this one or this one gets taken down with the material taken down, then it'll determine which one is developed first while the other one is still being removed. But it'll be at least 3 to 5 years prior to taking the material out. If there's more demand, maybe sooner, and there may be less demand for soil. It just depends on projects where the material may go. It's some great LVC material, low volume change material that gets used around in the community. So it'll be a commodity, a soil that will be used around the area for building.
Yeah. At this point, it's just one lot right now. When it comes to future development, will it then have to be divided up into lots? Is that good based on who shows up or how much somebody wants?
Well, good question. I mean, it will have to be platted. We'll have to preliminary plat the whole 78 acres as to what it would be as far as access, roads, sewer, water. And then a final plat will be developed from that. And that final plat will be defined as to whether it's, maybe it's 3 lots, 10 lots, or it'll be developed as to how that is shaken out depending on market.
But that's going to be platted later.
It'll be 3 to 5 years before that is done.
I just wanted to clarify
When you're looking at, is this another Scorpion site? Well, I don't think that you can get a piece of ground here big enough for like that kind of a project that is in one piece. So you're probably looking at more like the business park that is out at the by the airport now, which would be your smaller lots. Just the way it's laid out, the way it's looking, you're probably looking at 5, 10, 15, maybe 15-acre lots. There could be some at 3. It'd just be a mixture of what's the market in 3 to 5 years from now.
Anything else?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Our third scheduled meeting is from the city of Ogden, who will speak against the annexation. Who is here? We have someone here from Ogden.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Pete Rumble, Hoover Law Firm in Junction City, Kansas. I've been asked by the city of Ogden to present to the county commission of Riley County our petition. It's not in front of the microphone, please. Apologize. Okay. This happens to me all the time. I've been asked by the city of Ogden to incorporate into the record our resolution passed on Thursday opposing the proposed annexation of this property. I see that material appears at page 1 of 2 of your packet. I got to commend the Riley County Counselor's Office for the excellent preparation they always do. It's always a pleasure presenting before the Board of County Commissioners for that reason. But I think I appreciate the presentation by Mr. BOCC on behalf of MCM Materials in support of this petition for annexation. I feel like I could use it pretty much as a segue. I believe that Mark correctly stated, why not Ogden? We have over 200 acres of property that has been long scheduled for development for commercial purposes, just southwest of the area proposed to be annexed. I do differ from Mr. BOCC in this respect. The slide that you saw is not our current plan. The area that is proposed to be annexed is within our planning area. Our current slide, and we'll try to get that material incorporated in the record if possible. It is not proposed for development. We don't believe there is a need from our planning perspective for the development of that land. We have plenty of commercial property that is nearby, that has been platted, and is amenable to the extension of utilities and services, and including fire, as would the property if annexed in the city of Manhattan. Where we differ from Mr. BOCC is that when we look for any guidance in the comprehensive plan that's been adopted by this committee, when we look at the MCUAP of the city of Manhattan, and of course our own plan, we see no parallel, we see no guidance that this area that is proposed to be annexed should be developed for commercial purposes. We do see, of course, it's zoned agricultural. We do see such provisions for the property that we now have zoned for commercial purposes, both in the Riley County plan, the city of Manhattan plan, and of course our own plan for development. That area is available. And we've always, that is, the city of Ogden has always hoped to extend east of K-18. That was the whole purpose of the alignment. These issues were discussed extensively as we discussed the alignment of K-18, the development east of K-18 in the city of Ogden, the floodway that was constructed so as to remove this property from the flood zone. One of the concerns that we believe the county should embrace as it considers its petition for annexation is this express goal of your plan for the efficient distribution of development throughout the county. And there we are. We're sitting there. It seems, to use a perhaps oft-used phrase, a no-brainer, where additional commercial development should go at this time. our concern, the city of Ogden, that should this property be allowed to be rezoned for commercial and industrial purposes, it would, of course, make the development of existing commercial property less feasible, less attractive from a competitive point of view. You'll add more property to that inventory. We have plenty of inventory, plenty of commercial lots that are ready for development now. So we asked that the county look at its plan. City of Manhattan look at its plan. Ogden's looking at its plan. It is pretty clear where commercial development can go. We're ready to go. It's ready. It's got access. There's streets there. We've been paying specials for some time now on that. And the addition of more commercial property for commercial development just to the northeast of the city of Ogden will indeed hinder the city of Ogden's ability to develop this property for commercial purposes. And therefore, we do not find that the county should approve this petition for annexation. Any questions?
Yeah, so you're saying that the actual development of the 78 acres is going to hinder Ogden's ability to grow?
To develop, yes. Yes, we've really not made, but for those apartments, we've not made that leap across K18 yet. It's a competitive environment. The additional commercial property nearby is going to make it more difficult to develop that property as we have long planned. The argument about utilities and fire protection, these are the same challenges City of Manhattan is going to face as it extends those utilities to that area. We can meet those challenges too, and plan to do so.
And you have the water and sewer available to hook into?
We could extend that service.
Do you have the fire protection services to do that?
Presently we have agreements in place. We do not have fire protection full-time from the city of Ogden, but we do have agreements with nearby entities for that. And we can indeed, just as any developer would, we make provisions for 24-hour fire protection. This is part of the development plan. I mean, these are yet services and utilities that have yet to be put in there, but any development, whether it's going to be in the area proposed to be annexed or in the property we've already got zoned for this purposes, these are things that can and will be put in place. So, yes, sir.
I don't see when commercial development takes place, I don't see having some next door doesn't hurt it. It grows. If there's commercial development on one side of the road, it's going to be on the other side of the, it's going to grow on the other side of the road too. I don't see them being in competition with it. The more commercial growth happens, it grows next to itself. It's not.
Yeah, well, I understand. I disagree. The more inventory that's in place, the less, the more competitive it's going to be, the more difficult it's going to be for us to develop this property for that purpose. And we're right there. I mean, that is practically the city of Ogden's influence area and planning area. And when you're talking, it's a question of pressure, perhaps. Maybe it's an analogy you could use there. The more space that's there, the less pressure there's going to be for the development of those lots. We would like to make that move sooner rather than later. And again, that is what the plan is, regardless of what governmental entity you're looking at. Every plan has the commercial development occurring in those areas that we have planned.
Would the city be willing to, if say take in this piece of property into the Ogden plan? Or could it?
I believe that's a discussion that should have taken place before today.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we noted in the petition in our resolution. There's been no such discussion. We would like to have these negotiations with the landowner, the city of Manhattan, as to how this commercial development can be distributed between the city of Manhattan and the city of Ogden. They're definitely coming west. We're coming east. It seems that, or we would like to come east. It seemed like this is a conversation that should have taken place some time ago. And I'm sure, based on the discussions that I had on Thursday night, that we'd be happy to have such discussions. in negotiations.
The Midwest Concrete has not contacted you, the city?
I am informed that there has been no such discussion. That it was almost, and again, I'm relatively new to this, except for the highway issues, but my understanding is that at a neighborhood meeting, it was presumed that that the city of Manhattan would be the one that would have the capability to extend these services to that lot. And that the city of Ogden did not have the ability to do that. We were never asked that question specifically, or what kind of arrangements we can make with these services. And that's the point I would like to impress upon the county commission today, is that if asked, they would have received an affirmative answer. So, I mean, I know you're going to make a decision in the best interest of the county and the plan and the like, but one thing that I would like to make, regardless of the disposition you make of this petition, is we would like this discussion to take place at the city of Manhattan and Ogden talk to each other, and those that would be interested in developing commercial property as to how city of Ogden can grow to the east. We think that's a legitimate objective of this county commission, and should be supported by the county commission. Such discussions will be harder. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay. Our fourth scheduled testimony is from the Random Woods homeowners. Is there anyone here, or is there anyone present today to testify on behalf of Random Woods homeowners, like from the homeowners association or the homeowners? If so, let's say. If it's the homeowners, they would have the homeowners association would have 20 minutes.
The homeowners have 3 minutes.
3 minutes each from the homeowners. Okay. So each speaker, if you step to the podium and give your name and address, and then follow the rules of public comment session, and you'll each have 3 minutes.
You like we told them we have a minute left.
If you would, I would appreciate it.
Sure. It's every time. Right.
All right. Good morning. My name is Stafford Gosser. I reside at 2455 Brookfield Drive. That is in the Random Woods neighborhood, directly to the west of the proposed property for annexation. I had some stuff in general prepared to talk about, and I'm still going to include some of that, but I'd like to kind of tag on to what was already mentioned today. I think primarily to start with, to reinforce kind of what the city of Ogden just spoke about, and that is their understanding of the sensitivity of the land located next to the airport in Random Woods. And I think that is reinforced more specifically within the K-18 corridor study, where it talks about basically quantifying the area as low population density, all of which supports an understanding of this corridor as rural, environmentally sensitive, and focus on the core needs of the few employment-based uses, including the airport in the area. Not to mention, it both borders on the north and is included in the critical area for Fort Riley. And as I understand it, and this comes from me talking to JAG on Fort Riley, the Environmental Division and the Corps of Engineers, no one has reached out to Fort Riley about land use in this piece of property that, like I said, both borders Fort Riley and falls within the critical area. Not to mention, if we were to include that more specifically in the discussion, the DoD has its own special set of regulations in regards to airport safety, and that is a collaborative effort between MHK and Fort Riley for Fort Riley, the installation of Fort Riley to use the airport. And I guess one of the things, going back to some of the pictures we were shown, is within the 2020 Manhattan airport plan that is available on their website, it shows the runway protection zone, which is a highly regulated invisible area extending from the end of the runway as extending onto the subject property. Problem with that being, of course, residential is contraindicated in any place that zone may permeate, but it specifically mentions contraindicated uses of industrial due to the congregation of persons. So that's really the purpose of the specification and the guidelines within that RPZ is protection of persons and property. So I think that Fort Riley needs to be contacted and be given their input. That is actually listed within the MUACP. There is a memorandum of understanding between Riley County, the city, and Fort Riley that dictates those land development proposals as it pertains to Fort Riley interest. And lastly, noise attenuation. Right now, Brandon Woods falls within the LUPZ, which is the noise contours from Fort Riley. The decibel level ranges from 57 to 62, which is what they measured. That's average for starters, but we also border the airport, which we fall close to the 60 decibel range. And now we're talking about also being subjected to industrial use noises and 4 to 5 years of grading, which can contribute up to 90 decibels of sound up within 50 feet away of those grading practices taking place.
That's your time.
Thank you. Any questions or?
Good morning, Ed Huddleston, 2438 Brookfield Drive, I'm also the Vice President of the Homeowners Association. The subject of feasibility of the Manhattan Annex and develop the land in question. In the annexation, review factor number 6, no land is available in the county for this type of zoning. Land has been sitting for sale on Eureka Drive for several years. Looking on the internet, if you go to page, I think it's 100, you can see where half the lots are sitting there empty. They're still for sale, yet they say they still need to develop this. There's no roads going in and out of the land in question. They're right there, you see, there's like all those numbers, they're blank spaces. So why are we tearing up the ground to redevelop this area? The second problem is when we do building permits within our neighborhood and they apply for a building permit through the Riley County, there's always been a time limit on how long you can work on something. We don't tell people they can add an extension to their house for 6 years. You know, they usually start and finish within 6 months or a year. And they're degrading and tearing out the soil. When they remove the soil, the question is what's going to happen with the erosion? You're going to have excavating equipment that's 35 tons or greater, jackhammering for 4 or 5 years. They're already starting to remove trees and putting them in big piles. Are they going to leave the piles there for the next 5 years? They're working on the C2 area. I got it. They're creating the land basins for the development of the neighborhood, but you have drain off. If you look at the very top plot, north part of their plot, their zoning, there's no access to it. The only access is through Eureka Drive, Vincent School Road, which is an abandoned road that's blocked off because of the communication tower up by the airport. So how are they going to annex that property up there? There's a big draw spur in between the southern part of their property that they're trying to zone and the northern part. How are they going to do that hill? They're talking about going to like a 4-to-1 slope, but they say parts of the area is 3-to-1 slope. But when they're leaving, 1 minute, as they're leaving Manhattan, I work for K-State. We bring in football players, people come and go. They're going to drive out of the neighborhood. They're going to look off to the right. They're going to be seen in the stripping money. So is that an image we want to give of Manhattan and Riley County for the next 5 years until the development is complete? Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have very short words.
Okay.
My name is Yolanda Bear, from the Bear Trust. I live at 2710 Maplewood Circle, And over the years, I was very fortunate to meet with some of the airport directors. And I got involved with the master plan, and they explained the noise levels to me. And they said that it's daytime decibels and nighttime decibels. And as the Manhattan airport is getting more and more bigger planes coming in, it's going to be much louder. They have explained that over the years, and I made a phone call to the FAA, and they said there's rules for airports, including regional airports, depending on the noise zone, that they have to give us some kind of soundproof. And that's all that I want to say.
Anyone else want to speak?
Susie Stanfield, 2494 Bighorn Lane. I think I can speak for a lot of people in that when Random Woods was plotted, it was not included in the city limits of any city. And I think we would like to keep it that way. So we're talking about the city of Manhattan expanding westward. The city of Ogden just stood here and said they'd like to expand eastward. Well, in between that is us. And so this has come up in the past with Ogden, looking at taking us in, and it was determined that that wouldn't be a good move. And so I think that the residents of Random Woods would like to keep us our little area where we don't belong to any city. So we would ask the commissioners to keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you.
You like it, Earl.
Anyone else want to speak? Yes.
I'm really short. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah.
I'm Laura Donnelly. I live at 2439 Woodside Lane. And I would pretty much like to request more and better communication, sort of like the city of Ogden did, and Stephen? That guy. You. Because this was pretty much given to us as a done deal. And we are not suggesting that somebody who owns their own property is not able to develop it. I mean, or do what they want with it. We would just really like to make it the best for everybody involved. And the buffer zone of 50 feet is really tiny. I mean, they doubled it, which is great from the city's requirement. But if we could look at communication, some parkland, many cities have an open space plan. Many counties have an open space plan that includes keeping natural environments, park-like places, and being near those increases the value of your rental property and your resale value. So I think that's mostly, I just to participate rather than just have somebody come in and say, I got work. No, important. The excavation plan, the drainage, the erosion, and the sediment plan is listed in the annexation paperwork, but I can't find it. Now, maybe you don't have to do it until after the annexation is complete, and then it becomes something they have to do. But that's something also very critical to Random Woods. Are they going to build a retaining wall? What happens is the drainage thrown back into our neighborhood. So to participate in that would be great. And for making parks, really making the land pleasant to be in. I think we can come up with something really good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have someone else to speak.
I don't know if I can come up and speak again, or if this is still part of Random Woods, or whenever.
This is still part of Random Woods. Yeah.
Just whenever.
Okay. Is anyone else from Random Woods that Random Woods that would like to speak? Okay.
My name is John Chingway, 2651 Brook Hollow Court. After looking over all this paperwork and seeing the nice package that's together, looking at these empty spots, I even did a drive around to look at the airport and what is it called, the technology park. It's half empty. And I know what Ogden's saying. Ogden's saying that if they build here, it's going to take away from someone wanting to build or develop in Ogden. It makes sense to me. Not that Ogden's going to build it. Obviously, Ogden doesn't own the property. The property owner can do with as he pleases as long as it follows state and local code and stuff like that. We kind of, as a neighborhood, want it left as just trees, but I know that's not going to happen because of the FAA. I'm of the opinion: remove the trees, remove the dirt, sell the dirt because that's a lot of money, but don't develop there. It's nice seeing the deer in our backyards. When they start building and put this huge cliff in from removing all this, we're not going to have that. A lot of neighbors feel that it's how should I say this? Who cares what happens? Well, as a homeowner there, I want to maintain my property values. So again, when you think about it, it always comes down to dollars. Okay, now the property owner is concerned about making money. I'm concerned about keeping my money. It's dollars and donuts. Okay. We don't need any. We have all these empty lots. We have all these other places that are already zoned for commercial. Why do we have to change this? As far as services, I get one of the questions from one of you guys was, does it have fire service? Well, apparently we're already looking at this plan. And when they say that there isn't a plan for this or hooking up to that road, that one of our roads that's a dead end, I'm pretty sure there is already a plan. How are they going to get out of that development? That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from Random Woods want to speak? No, having heard that, I would end the. Are you sure? This is your opportunity to speak.
Well, I gave you some handouts because I'm not much of a speaker. So is that good?
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah. Pretty harmless.
Yeah.
But back you up.
I've never seen a crowd drag somebody to the podium.
I'm Gene Redfield. I live on 5026 Wildcat Creek Road. I'm the south neighbor of the tech park from airport to road. Anyway, I'm also a retired pilot. I am very concerned with the end of the runway. That is the Manhattan's primary approach, instant approach. It's our ILS runway. And any industry down there on the end, I don't care how much you claim not to have smoke, just having people and businesses there does create. And if nothing else creates more heat, which does create during bad weather, more fog, more other negative factors for the pilot flying the airplane. But anyway, that's about all I can say about it. I'm more concerned on the aviation part of it. So.
Okay, thank you for speaking.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak? And hasn't spoken before? Okay, there's one last, okay.
I just wanted to ask one, okay.
They said them to come back up.
Sorry for that. I just wanted to ask, what are the benefits to the county of allowing annexation? If you guys could explain that. And are there different benefits for annexation to the county if Manhattan annexes or Ogden annexes?
And again, this kind of misconstrues what the purpose of this hearing is.
Yeah.
This is not to ask questions of the board.
Oh, too bad.
No,
Sorry.
I'm just- Let me just tell you why. Let me just tell you why. The purpose is that the purpose of this is to persuade the board one way or the other. It's not for them to justify.
I know, but I might have a defense if they get a certain benefit that I don't know about.
Well, that's nice. That's not what this hearing is for.
Okay, that's
Just so
cool.
you know, I mean, we're just trying to comply with what, so that it's fair for everybody.
That was my last question.
I understand. I get you. I get you.
Okay, well, if there are no other speakers for Random Woods, I will close the public hearing. At this point, we will open the matter for discussion and decision by the Board of County Commissioners. The commissioners can ask questions of anybody who has spoken or any of the presenters. But it's basically a discussion between the three of us. So. Ready?
I'll start. I did go out and drive through the neighborhood, so I knew what we were talking about. In fact, I was just out there again yesterday. I'm surprised somebody creaking along, driving through the neighborhood. I was expecting somebody to come out and say, "What are you doing up here?" But because I stopped and looked at, views from you guys from your area and from that, so that and I see that they are taking down the trees, which they don't need a permit for anything. I mean, that's their property. They can take down trees. As I came up, I saw there was a bunch of equipment up there already, and saw that's what they're doing, is taking down trees now. And one of the things that keeps being brought up, it's on my sheet. It keeps talking. Several people mentioned that it's going to be an industrial area, and it's the zoning. Because I went and copied off the zoning from the Manhattan of what they were required. What they were asking for is called the ICS. It's industrial or commercial services. There's separate ones for light industry and general industry, and that's not what these are. What this one, the ICS purpose, provide heavy commercial, retail, and industrial land uses that provide for sales, service, outdoor storage, and display of heavy equipment products. So it's not a manufacturing plant that's going to be putting off smoke or anything like that. Just to clarify something that's been brought up.
Okay. Well, obviously, this particular area that we're discussing falls within the realm of my commission district. So I have a really good vested interest, but just to mention a couple of things, and I actually do want to answer the lady's question who just last spoke. For the county, it does provide some benefit, because we're going to put something in place that it's going to be required to pay property tax. We're going to have something in place that's going to create commerce, so it increases sales tax. Given what it may or may not be, or which business or businesses come into that particular location, it may provide jobs and opportunity. All four things are things that we severely need here within our county. I can tell you that Riley County is the highest property tax exempt county in the state out of all 105, and it's not close. 55% of your property tax is paying 100% of the bills. That's not just the fault of lack of development or business or that. There's several different factors that are incorporated within that, but that's something that has to change for future generations. Quite frankly, they're just not going to be able to afford to live here. That's just the reality of the scenario. I actually like the fact that we're not trying to put large tracts of land into place to attract a scorpions or something thereabouts. I kind of like the smaller lot idea where we're going to get smaller businesses, maybe organically and through grassroots. Maybe people that are already here will invest in that particular area and develop their business plan and business idea in that particular location, because we've had quite a few successes and maybe quite a few successes that should have been, but have at least started out in that manner. And I believe that that's who we are. That's part of our identity here. I want to take a moment and talk about the business park that's already in place over there, because I know quite a bit about that, because I myself work over there in that location, as I've been out at Florence Manufacturing myself for just about 8 years now. And I also was part of a building team that helped build the Covan facility that's in place there in 2005 and 2006. And the reality there is when we worked on that business plan 20 some odd years ago, we really didn't know what we were going to be able to expect 20 years later. Most of those lots there are owned by separate entities. And most of those lots average in size of about 12 to 16 acres. So most of your either small industrial or commercial facilities, it just doesn't work. And I know this because we've thought about expanding into the other location, but that location isn't for sale. So we've had to revamp and rework just our own facility in order to make it work for the future with what we already currently have. So yes, somebody may come in and that may work fine, but the chances of that happening on each one of those empty lots at this point in time is probably not as viable as we thought it was 20, 25 years ago. And that is something to take into consideration as we work through processes here in that location. I'm actually of the opinion that this 78 acres by itself isn't really going to be as in competition with some of the other acreage that's available out there, because I believe in the idea of mixture and diversity for commercial and industrial and private or public, whatever it may be, use moving forward. I actually think it makes this entire area even more viable, because people will see that things are coming in there and will want to come into this area. I know how certain things are platted right now, and I know, Bradley County, some of this is county property, some of it's City of Ogden property, some of it's City of Manhattan property, and there's variances in how those particular things go. But I can assure you that if, for instance, fire is needed, and some of those other properties are going to need viable utilities, which, is water, sewer, and believe it or not, broadband technology as well, part of that equation too. The city of Manhattan in this particular place has it already. It's already there. It's already established. They've already put the dollars front to put that forward. And we don't have to just have agreements or figure out how we're going to do it. And in most cases, you're talking about 7 digits easy and trying to get one, maybe even 2 of those into place. I think it's also worth noting that 24-hour fire service isn't just having one person in place at a facility. It requires a much larger plan than that. And in most cases, it requires at the bare minimum 8 different people serving at that location. If you can do 2 12-hour shifts, and whoever's responsibility it is to pay for those services, pay for that personnel, pay for those equipment, I'm sure it can be discussed. But do keep in mind that if you're talking 8 people, that's quite a bit. And maybe that works out, maybe that's fine, but that is something to take into consideration as you detail and move forward with any plot of land at this particular point in time. I'm also in the interpretation that there is, even with the expansion of the runway out there on both sides to the east and of course to the west, and we're talking obviously more to the west at this point in time, that there aren't larger commercial airplanes coming in at this point in time. That the major reason for that is Fort Riley themselves are the ones wanting to use that and bring in larger, I guess, cargo planes, personnel planes, that sort of thing. And I get the reason behind that, but from a commercial perspective, that really shouldn't change. And of course, as we've heard over the last couple of days, all that's going to be in place by September of this year. So weather permitting, all the other things that go into place with that. I do agree with the individual who talked about having better dialogue and communication in this process. Since I believe that this is going to be a 3 to 5 year endeavor to start with, I certainly believe those things can happen along the way there. And that dialogue, whether it be from the city or the private owner themselves, can certainly happen along the way, and other tracts of land being part of that as well. Maintaining property values, the reality is that we're not trying to find a way to increase some of that. We're not balancing out our property tax along the way. And I don't think I need to re-mention what I've already mentioned earlier as far as how far behind the coin we all are on that. We've talked a lot about land and environmental impacts. I don't know a lot about city codes and city land use, but I do know that they're pretty in depth. In fact, I would probably contend that they probably have more depth and more permitting processes than even we do out the county. And they have one thing that the county certainly doesn't have, and that's the ability to force those if they're not done properly. And I think that's something to take into consideration there that makes me feel a little bit comfortable with this scenario moving forward, that it will be done properly and it will be done right moving forward. With that, that's really, from my perspective, that's really all I have at this point in time.
Well, and our question is, does this annexation hinder or prevent proper growth and development of the area of any other incorporated city in the county? So that's basically the question we need to look at. Do you have any other comments on that?
For me, I don't see where it doesn't have anything but a positive impact moving forward. That's from my perspective. I mean, you're right, and that is what we discussed.
I was concerned about, and I was about the Ogden situation, the Ogden comment, that they feel that it's going to inhibit their growth of their properties, and that concerns me. That it would hinder Ogden's development. And they have had no discussion, they say, with NCM, with the city about that. That's one thing I've been looking at.
Well, my thoughts on that, I think city Manhattan has services available. I'll do the same to help you get them out there. And more opinion, more development. It increases the value of the next system. And to not want to go out by themselves, commercial development. They want to see other stuff run all around.
And I think, as you put other things in there and use the services and the utilities and the infrastructure that's already in place, that creates commerce, it creates taxation, it creates revenue that hopefully down the road will allow the city of Ogden a better chance at putting some of those things into place, whether it be fire services, whether it be other emergency services, sewer, water, electricity, technology, whatever it may be. It gives you a much more vital option to be able to produce the resources it takes to get to that point, which I think would further your chances of being able to develop several of those properties, whether they're zoned commercial, industrial, residential, or whatever they are at this point in time.
Can we ask questions of somebody else?
Yeah, you can ask questions.
Sure. This one I think would be for Mark, because some people made some comments about.
We do need to have them up to the podium.
All right, yeah. So there, and one of them in the writing thing talked about when you start hammering through rock ledges. So have you done this? Are there rock ledges there that you meant to be taking out? If they've had soil borings and that.
Rob, do you know if there's no rock?
Okay, like I said, that was a question that had come up by someone that is you're trying to pound on rock behind their house that's going to back down.
Yeah, I had a gut feeling there wasn't, but you've done some test holes and no, there's no rock.
Okay, but
Well, the people, would anybody like to speak to, their like the properties? I know a lot of times when you're digging and planting, you hit rocks. Does anybody have that experience on the property? Does it do? No.
I was gonna say, I don't live out there, so you can't look at me either.
I think I don't have specific experience with digging on my property, but there's relevant information. There is a identified dry stream that runs in from the north. There's a pond located on Fort Riley. And just from being back in that area, I know it is relatively rocky, I would assume, because of the water has washed out some of that top layer of soil. And that's just to the north of the property that's identified.
Okay, thank you.
And I can talk from experience, my driveway is purposely made with a divot according to the concrete people, and I did it on purpose because there's a storm drain right beside my house in between me and my neighbor. And the entire top of Brandon Woods floods into that drain ditch and goes straight out my backyard. And during the monsoon seasons, as I call it, every now and then I can walk out on my deck and I hear 3 feet of running water. If you go through Brandon Woods, there is purpose ditches that Riley County let us build on because they're the drainages. And those drainages go back into the area that they plan on building. So as they're developing it, there needs to be a lot of study as far as the drainage is concerned.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
their plans do show sediment basins to contain the runoff.
The ditches that they're talking about that they.
am I missing something?
It's not a free flow of everyone just
Right.
walking up there.
Yeah.
We're gonna be here all morning. There.
So we need to.
Wait until she
Wait till the
recognizes.
chair recognizes you and ask you to speak, please.
Okay, Mark, would you like to speak?
Yes, the ditches, I believe that they're talking about, there is on their plat, on their property, a conservation easement. That the property owners are supposed to, well, they're supposed to maintain. The county keeps you from doing stuff with them. Everything that we are doing, everything that's being done with this property is beyond that. That is not a conservation easement. That is on the 70-some acres. So everything that comes off of that, off of all their property, we're going to have to deal with on our side for erosion and so forth. I'm going to talk also about we have sedimentation basins. Whenever you disturb a certain amount of ground, you have to build sedimentation basins per the state. Those will be built as it is developed. It's over a certain amount of acreage. You've got to build it to hold the material, and then you have to have an erosion control plan and so forth. Approved by KDHE. And all those go with the city of Manhattan. It's all requirements and you go down the list, the checklist.
And that's a requirement that stays in place throughout the entire lifetime of the development, correct?
Correct. Until it is permanently seeded and is permanently completed, and then your NOI, your notice of intent for your soil erosion, can be terminated. It's done when it's completely seeded.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, one more thing.
Okay, would you please formally recognize someone so we know? Again, we're just trying to maintain good structure.
Okay, yes, I would formally recognize. What was your name again?
Laura Donovan.
Laura Donovan.
Thank you. Just you asked about the rock.
Mhm.
I'm thinking you're thinking of the limestone rock shelf.
Yes.
And all I have, I'm a relatively new resident of only about 10 years. But I asked a number of people about a well for gardening and maintaining my yard. They said that you can't. You hit the shelf. So it's just verbal. You hit the shelf and it's too expensive to drill a well just for your yard. But I didn't have any soil testing done. I didn't have any, but that's just what everybody says.
Yeah, commissioners have any questions of anyone or want to discuss anything more? Factual findings, and I'll have a copy of that.
Yeah, I wasn't for sure what that process is. I'm sure Nancy, you can explain.
Well, you've already supplied it in the comments that you've made.
Okay, let's go with that.
So if the board's ready, you can move to the motion. You can ask for a motion on one of the two alternatives, if you want to do that.
Are we ready to decide? We want to make a motion, or do we want to take a break and think about it? We have to have information in by what date is it next week?
Next Thursday, you'll get
Next
a
Thursday.
part of your motion I anticipate you will make is that by next Thursday, when this is finalized by a resolution, we'll set out what your findings are.
So we have to make the comments on what our findings are.
Well, you can't. That was a guide and you've done it. You've supplied those things that we need in order to plug into a resolution. I just want to tell you that.
So realistically, just so we're clarifying here, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We're, our personal opinions of whether this is good or bad, or whether we should or shouldn't do it isn't really relevant. It's whether we can produce evidence of detriment or negative impact, correct?
Well, it's your decision. If two of you have to decide whether or not what you heard today or read that was submitted and intended for today in its place, does that convince you? Does that convince at least two of you that this annexation either does or does not hinder or prevent the proper development and growth of the area or of any incorporated city? And it's easy to say that. It's tougher to get to there, but you've supplied by the discussion that you've had. You've said what is enough there, in my opinion, that will be able to be plugged into a resolution that you will see next Thursday, whichever way you go. See how I neatly just put it all back on you?
Yeah, I do that all the time. We used to.
Set the rules and then dump them on.
Oh, absolutely. Leave the room.
Just as an overall thoughts, my own thoughts are, I don't see that it hinders anything. I think there's enough regulations in place that will restrict what's them. As they mentioned, the FAA has requirements of what can be done there to interfere with air traffic. The 50-foot buffer of trees, that if there aren't trees there, that will have to be planted. There's it refers to Manhattan has rules about what size of trees they have to be and all that. And I think that covers. I think it's a good buffer between them. And I notice that it has to be certain size, but also the trees can't go over 50 feet, because again, that gets back to the FAA rules. So there's a lot of stuff in place to make sure it's done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to have just about every layer involved in this, from the FFA, which is federal, KDHE, which is state, obviously the city, and if anything falls outside of that purview, then obviously the county. So I'll be really interested to see what goes in after 3 to 5 years, because it isn't going to just be anything. So that's what'll be interesting, potentially moving forward.
I still believe that because of the testimony of the city of Ogden, that it would prevent that part of the development. I know all these things are in place, but I think the question before us is that, and that's how I find.
I'll put the motion out there and we'll see where it lays. And agree the board finds and has determined the proposed annexation of the real estate will not hinder or prevent the proper growth and development of the area, or that any of the other incorporated city locations within Riley County. Today's decision shall become a final order upon this board's passage of a resolution to be presented during its public meeting on January 19th, 2023. You have a time on that?
No, I haven't scheduled a time. It'll probably be during the business meeting.
That's what
Probably best, which if
Okay,
anyone
this
wants to
is
be here, it's
part of
8:30.
Open meeting.
I will second that.
Okay, any discussion? More discussion? Okay, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. No, or nay? Okay, motion passes. The meeting is closed. Public meeting, or this meeting is closed.
Adjourn.
We need to actually
Motion to adjourn. Fine, fine.
Yes.
You're good.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I can go ahead and second that motion.
All in favor of closing the meeting?
It's nice you brought us for.
Yeah.
Catherine, you only spoke up because I thought, I didn't want you to think you had adjourned the meeting.
Yeah.
Perfectly okay to say you're closing the discussion.
John, can you give me that wording you read on the motion, please?
That wasn't the purpose.
It should be number eight, number, letter A.
Thank you. Everybody say.
You're gonna get